There's a ton of variety on the Central Oregon coast, and it's one of the more popular areas for people to relocate to. Why? We're going to talk about it in this video. Stay tuned to learn more. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Paul Clem with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from the Oregon coast. And in this video today, we're going to talk about the Central Oregon coast. Definitely one of the more popular regions. It's an area that a lot of people seem to be flocking to, and it has a lot of variety. So it has a handful of larger towns. It has quick and easy access to Portland, or to Salem, or to Corvallis, or to Eugene. So a lot of Western Oregon is very accessible from the Central Oregon coast. And the Central Oregon coast offers a beautiful landscape, incredible beaches, a lot of the amenities that I think a lot of people are really looking for in a smaller town when they're moving to the Oregon coast in particular. There are several hospitals, so there's access to healthcare. There's going to be grocery stores. There's going to be a lot of things to do on the Central Oregon coast. And again, there's a lot of varieties. So you have larger towns like Lincoln City, Newport, and Florence, and then you have some smaller towns, your Depoe Bays, Waldports, Yachats, and then you have some unincorporated areas of Lincoln County where you do have some residential development as well. So if you want to be in an area that's more dense and more populated, maybe a little more bustling, if you want to be in a town that isn't quite that small but doesn't have as much activity or action on a day-to-day basis, or if you want to be in an area that feels more removed, more rural, more secluded, you can get all of that on the Central Oregon coast. And you can span the entire Central coast in about a couple hours. So anywhere you are on the Central Oregon coast, you're going to have access to towns to the north and to the south. That is with the exception of Florence. Florence is a little more isolated. Florence is going to be about 45 minutes south of Yachats, and it's going to be about 30-40 minutes north of Waldport. So you're not going to have as much accessibility necessarily living in Florence, but we're going to talk about all of that today. Now, if this is your first time to the channel, or if you've been to the channel and haven't already, make sure to subscribe and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. We've helped so many people relocate to the Oregon coast, and as real estate professionals in Oregon, we love to help with that process. So if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video and schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we would love to help with your move to the Oregon coast. We're going to span the Central coast going from north to south, first talking about Lincoln City. So Lincoln City is a really long stretch along Highway 101 here. It's a popular destination for tourism, in particular for overnight stays. Lincoln City doesn't really have a cohesive downtown area, and I think that is probably one of the biggest gripes from people when you look at what people might want in their day-to-day as far as amenities. People are moving to the Oregon coast. A lot of people are looking for kind of the quintessential beach town with a main street, with shops and restaurants and things like that. Now you can get shops, restaurants, coffee shops, kind of all of the above in Lincoln City, but it's going to be a little more kind of distributed throughout this long stretch here. So Lincoln City was actually once 5 different small towns, and then in the early 60s, they were all incorporated together as Lincoln City. So you primarily access Lincoln City from Highway 18 here, coming in from the east, from Western Oregon. So you can see from Portland, you can get through this corridor here, through McMinnville, hit Highway 18, and then you're going to come out into Lincoln City. There's a couple of little communities, Rose Lodge and Otis, here along the highway, but it's not really until you get to Yachats and then to this northern part of Lincoln City until you feel like you're really at the coast. So Yachats, this is a community that is on Devil's Lake, just on the north side here. And again, you can see Lincoln City is really just kind of long and skinny. There's not going to be a ton of development too far east here on the east side of town. You're in the trees, you're in much more rural areas here. So there are, again, some distinct neighborhoods. There's a lot of consistency between a lot of these neighborhoods, especially all of the neighborhoods on the east side, on the west side of Highway 101 here. So these are all going to be, beachfront residential areas. You have Rhodes End up here on the north. This is probably the most removed from town. There's not a ton of commercial development up here. A lot of second homes and vacation homes. A lot of big, beautiful beach houses. You can see all along kind of this Logan Road here. You're going to get these beachfront, oceanfront houses. So you can see there's a ton of options here for beachfront and oceanfront. From the highway, so there's there's like a strip mall in this area. There's the McMinimans restaurant, which is great. You have Safeway, you have some restaurants in here. And then of course, you're gonna have the casino right here. Big attraction to the area. A lot of people moving to the area, aren't necessarily looking for a place with a casino. But if you want to have the option to, maybe get out and play some blackjack or something, play some cards, Chinook Winds is here. They have restaurants, and it can be a cool place to hang out. They have events, New Year's Eve parties, things like that. So if you're in town looking for something a little more lively, a little more upbeat to do, of course, you do have the casino. So just kind of going down 101 here. Along 101, it's all your commercial development, so your grocery stores, your things, things like that. On the west side of the highway, all residential. And then you do have some resorts. So you have some anywhere from small kind of bed and breakfast type places to some really large resorts that have maybe 200, 300 rooms. One thing that's a really big attraction too here in Lincoln City is going to be the Lincoln City outlets. So the outlet mall, a lot of people like the accessibility to shopping. And of course you can, shop a lot of kind of bigger brand names, at some discounted prices. That's definitely an attraction for the area. And that's something that I think people who live in Lincoln City tend to enjoy. You also have up here the hospital, right? So you do have a big hospital, Samaritan North. Right on Devil's Lake here, actually. And then you have this open green space. There's some trails. And you'll see this throughout Lincoln City. There's these green spaces kind of in town that are really wooded, really pretty, and you have accessibility to trails and hiking and things like that. So that's really cool. Another thing about Lincoln City, too, that's unique is you do have Devil's Lake, which we've mentioned. So you have residential development pretty much all around the lake. So if you want to be in a coastal community, but maybe you have a boat, maybe you're want to be getting out and doing some like kayaking and paddleboarding, things like that. Being close to the lake is really nice. Really, anywhere you live in Lincoln City, you're going to be able to access the lake. So you don't necessarily have to live right on the lake, but there are some cool lakefront homes here in the area. So overall in Lincoln City, there's about 10,000 people. Again, there's a hospital. Lincoln City is probably the best town to live in on the Central Oregon coast for beaches. So you can see, I think it's said that there's 7 miles of uninterrupted beaches here in Lincoln City. And there's public beach access really everywhere you go. So anywhere you live in Lincoln City, even if you are on the east side of the highway here and you can't necessarily walk or it's not as convenient to walk, you're going to be able to access the beaches very easily. And the beaches are so big that, sure, there's going to be areas that are going to be more busy and have more people in them, but there's going to be areas that you can find that maybe aren't as popular or kind of as obvious to tourists. So you can definitely find your own secluded spot on the beach here in Lincoln City, even in the warmer months. So if the beaches are something that are really drawing you to the Oregon coast and being able to access the ocean, Lincoln City is going to be really about as good as you can get on the Central Coast. So continuing to move south here, south of Lincoln City, you have the Siletz Bay. So Lincoln City really kind of ends on the north side of the bay, and then you get to the south side of the bay, and you're going to get into Glen Eden Beach and Lincoln Beach. So you can see there's a lot of residential development in these areas. So these are unincorporated areas of Lincoln County. So there's going to be less commercial development. There's going to be less going on in these areas. It's going to be a little bit quieter. You do have the Seagrove community up here, which is really cool. You also have over here Salishan, which is a resort community, and then there's the golf course through here, and then you have a lot of really big, nice homes in here. HOA is a little bit steep. It's kind of a strange arrangement where all the homes in this area are on a 100-year land lease. So the land is leased, you own the home, of course, but you have this Salishan spit that if you're driving on 101 looking west, really cool to see all these big houses here on this spit here, just kind of right on the water. And of course, being in any one of these homes, you have some of the best views that you can get of the beaches and of the water on the Oregon coast. So Salishan is really cool. Glen Eden Beach, Lincoln Beach, this is an area that a lot of people are attracted to. And then moving down south here, we're going to get into Depoe Bay. So Depoe Bay is just going to really be about 15 minutes south of Lincoln City. This is a much smaller town. It's kind of a tourist attraction type area. You really get that feel when you're here. There are some resorts here right on the water, so there are some places to stay, but you don't see as many homes overall. So people will definitely go there and do a vacation, do like an Airbnb or something like that, but maybe not as popular for that. This community in here, this Whale Cove, really beautiful. Again, you're just right there on the water. One thing about Depoe Bay, you can see not a lot of beaches, right? So if you are staying in Depoe Bay, you might get some incredible water views. The bay here is awesome, great whale watching. In fact, it's probably the spot on the Oregon coast to do some whale watching. But overall, for the beachgoers, if you want to do some beach combing or just spend some time on the sand, you're not going to get a lot of that in Depoe Bay. You're going to have to go back up north here to this Lincoln Beach area for the kind of the nearest stretch of beaches. In town, you do have some shops and restaurants and things like that along this corridor here. Some restaurants, some pretty good restaurants too, and then you have some development up in the hills here, which is really cool. So a lot of these homes, especially up here, you have some water views, you have some bay views, which is really cool. But overall, this is a town of about 1,500 people. I think by and large, it's really a bedroom community of Lincoln City. And so if you're living in Depoe Bay, you're going to be getting up into Lincoln City quite a bit, for your day-to-day shopping and things like that, which is fine. Again, it's really not too far. And if you want a community that's a little more removed but still well-established, Depoe Bay could be a good option. As you move south, you're going to pass through Otter Rock, Beverly Beach. So there is some residential development in this area. We'll talk more about these unincorporated areas here in a moment. You have the Beverly Beach State Park, and there are some homes in this area too. There's some camping. I know that's a really popular place to go camping. They have like yurts, which are really cool. You can rent the yurts or like these little domes. It's pretty cool. And then the next town working your way south is going to be Newport. So Newport's going to be a little bit further from Depoe Bay than Lincoln City is, but still maybe 20 minutes and all told. So from Newport to Lincoln City, you can do that drive in about 25 minutes, depending on where you're coming from in Newport, where you're going in Lincoln City, or vice versa. It can maybe take 30 to 40 minutes, just kind of depending on how the traffic's moving and things like that. But as you move south here from Depoe Bay, again, you go through some of these unincorporated areas. The first community you're going to hit is Agate Beach. So this is all part of Newport, kind of on the north side, all right along 101, like you see really in all of these towns on the Oregon coast. You have the Aquinnah Head Lighthouse here, which is cool. So in this area here, you do have access to some beaches. These are going to be a little bit quieter, a little less busy because you're not really in town so much. And you're going to have some residential development here kind of up on this bluff. So there are some spots here on the north side of Newport where you can get some really nice, beautiful ocean views in Agate Beach. And then moving your way south, you're going to start really getting into town, into Newport. This is kind of the central area of Newport here, kind of this intersection. But there's two primary areas of Newport that really tend to draw a lot of people. You have the Aquinnah Bayfront, so down here you have all the shops, restaurants, Ripley's Believe It or Not, you have the Wax Museum, really popular area for tourists. So a lot of people come into Newport, stay a weekend, something like that, and they're going to be hanging out around here quite a bit. On the south side of the bay, you have the Oregon Coast Aquarium, which is really the aquarium on the Oregon coast. So a lot of great attractions there, really great spot to spend an afternoon. And then next to the Oregon Coast Aquarium, you're going to have somewhere around here, the Rogue Brewery. There it is. So right on this marina here, you have Rogue Brewing, a big established brewery in Oregon. They national distribution, international distribution. So if you're really anywhere you're coming from in the country, you probably have seen Rogue. And this is where they do all of their production. But they have a pub in there, and you can see all the facility. It's really cool. And then another spot in Newport that really draws a lot of attention is this Nye Beach area. So this is really kind of the beachfront, beach town spot in Newport. So you have the bayfront, of course, but Nye Beach is where you're going to have your little restaurants and shops and things like that, and some really great beaches along here, a lot of public beach access. And you can see it's not quite as long as or accessible as in Lincoln City. So again, Lincoln City is really going to be the best spot for you if you want as much beach as possible. But Nye Beach here in Newport is great. It is a really great spot to hang out if you want to be right on the ocean. This is kind of a bustling little community. You're going to get a lot of tourists coming through, so it's going to be busy. And there are some issues that come along with people coming in for the weekend, maybe parking on the street, leaving trash, things like that. But also in Newport, you have some residential development here kind of back behind the bay as well. So all up above this bayfront, you're going to get some neighborhoods that are going to be a little quieter. This is going to feel a little more like a kind of a suburban community more than feeling like you're right at the beach or at the ocean. So there's a lot of variety in Newport. Obviously the bay, the big bridge there in town, the beaches really make for a really well-rounded kind of experience day to day living in Newport. So it's an area that, again, it's going to be really popular and an area that a lot of people have their eyes on. So overall, Newport, a town of over 10,000 people, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be busier, it's going to have more to offer in terms of amenities and kind of things that you might need in your day-to-day than some of the smaller towns. You have the hospital right here in town, Samaritan Pacific. Your closest town to the east is going to be Corvallis. So on Highway 20, you can head east here, get all the way over into Corvallis, which is a town of about 65,000 people. That's where Oregon State University is, college town. There might be some things that you might need to travel over into Corvallis for. That's about an hour drive, pretty quick and easy up and over this pass here. And definitely an area overall that a lot of people moving to the Central Oregon coast or having, people that have their eye on the Central Oregon coast are considering. Now you also have Toledo, which is this town here, just about 7 miles east of town. So, you could consider this a coastal community because of its access and proximity to the ocean. But this is really a logging town. They have a paper mill in town. This was a town that really kind of was developed and grew when there was kind of a timber boom in Oregon. So you get remnants of that going through. This is all kind of situated up on a hill for the most part. So you have like these elevation, this big elevation in town, and then you have kind of these like haulers that are at lower elevation. So really unique landscape overall in Toledo. There's this little main street in Toledo with some restaurants and shops and things like that. Pretty sleepy, pretty quiet town overall, and you're not going to get the same kind of views when it comes to like ocean views, beaches, things like that. Again, your proximity is great along Highway 20 here, getting out to Newport. So if you want to be a little more removed, maybe be up in the trees a little bit more, Toledo definitely could be something worth considering if you're looking for also having that proximity and access to the ocean and to the beaches. So if you go south of Newport, about another 20 minutes. You're going to go through this community called Seal Rock, and you can see there's quite a bit of development in here. This is an unincorporated area. Again, if you're looking for a little more seclusion, if you want to be kind of off the beaten path, so to speak, although you're right on Highway 101, Seal Rock could be a good option because you do have quick and easy access back up into Newport. Same goes for the South Beach area, actually, while we're mentioning it. So South Beach is going to be considered more to be Newport by and large, but you do have some of these areas that are right on the beach, again, a little bit removed from town as opposed to living right in town. So that's going to be the same with Seal Rock. Continuing to move south here, you get into Waldport. So Waldport's a town of about 2,500 people. It's going to be a little more sleepy, a little more laid back. It's going to be a great spot if you like to get out on the water. Great fishing spot. So Waldport, this is the town here. The little kind of main street stretch runs right through Highway 101. And then you do have some commercial development in here, some restaurants, your grocery store, your hardware store, things like that. And then you have some homes mixed in here too. A lot of the residential development in Waldport is going to be down here. All of this up here is at a higher elevation, so you're not getting a lot of areas where you have views necessarily, but you're right up the hill from town, and you have an area where you're kind of in the trees, so it really gives you a nice experience as far as being surrounded by nature. So you're a little removed from town, just being up the hill here. Also, in Waldport, you have this community called Bayshore, which you can see there's actually probably more homes in Bayshore than there are in Waldport. And the city limit is actually going to be right here along the Alsea Bay. So this is actually an unincorporated area, but it's a Waldport address. This is more of a resort community over here. You can see there's a ton of oceanfront, beachfront homes. So this whole stretch here, you're going to be kind of on this dune. So from this Oceana Drive here, there's this elevation up to these homes, and then it drops back down to the beach. So you really have kind of the perfect setup just to be kind of perched up on this hill here, being able to access the beach super quickly, just walk down the hill, and obviously you have the views. And there's a ton of homes here along this stretch that have that dynamic. Now, in Bayshore, again, there's a lot of homes where even if you're living a few blocks away from the beach, there's quite a few beach access points along here. So you can walk to the beach living in Bayshore, and it feels like this little beachfront community, whereas Waldport has a different feel. It's more of a bayfront community, although by and large this is kind of the same community all in one overall. But this Alsea Bay is really nice. It's really pretty. Actually, some of the homes here in Bayshore are on the bay, so you're right on the water. So you can, you have a nice view of the bridge looking east. So it still makes for some pretty nice views. But overall, if you're living in Waldport, you're probably going to be getting up into Newport quite a bit, because there's one little grocery store, and there's not really a ton in Waldport necessarily. Access to a lot of great outdoors, access to a lot of very beautiful areas for sure. Again, it's going to be more quiet, more laid back, but you probably find yourself traveling up into Newport, and again, this stretch is about 20 minutes or so to cover that span. So if you're moving south of Waldport, you're going to go through this Wakanda Beach, Tillicum Beach area, similar to Otter Rock, Seal Rock, South Beach, communities that are much quieter, and have much less going on. You're not going to have stores and shops and things like that through here, but you do have some nice opportunities to be in a quieter area and be really close to the beach. And so this stretch through here, again, you have beachfront. There's quite a long stretch of uninterrupted beaches here from Waldport down to Yachats, but once you get into Yachats, you can see the shoreline gets a lot rockier. So Yachats is the next town that we'll talk about. Yachats is about 1,000 people. Very scenic, one of the more unique towns on the Oregon coast. A lot of people love Yachats. A lot of people have it on their radar. A lot of people choose not to move to Yachats because there just aren't as many amenities. So you have like one little independent grocery store. It's probably going to be a little more expensive than your run-of-the-mill, Safeways or Kroger, things like that. You have all this elevation up above town, so you have incredible sweeping views of the ocean. There are a lot of resorts and bed and breakfast type places in Yachats, so it's very similar to Depoe Bay in that way. It probably has a higher volume of great restaurants, nice restaurants, and maybe a little more upscale restaurants too than Depoe Bay. So it has a little more of an upscale feel in that way, and Yachats is going to be a higher priced area when it comes to housing. The view here right in town, you have this area where the Yachats River comes in, and the kind of the downtown Main Street area is right along 101 here. But again, you can see not great beaches, right? So if you want to live in an area where you can easily drive to the beach or even walk to the beach, Yachats is not going to be the best for that. But some of the homes and views in Yachats are as good as you can get. Again, aesthetically, it's just a very pleasing place because you have this elevation up here. So you kind of have the tree line up behind town, and then you have the ocean. You know, it's right there. You can see it from anywhere on 101. And you still can get up into Newport in about 30 minutes. So you're going to be further, definitely, to Newport. But, you know, making this drive isn't so bad. You can still get up to Waldport. That's about 8 miles away. You have a ton of great beaches just north of town. So if beaches are your thing, but you love Yachats, just know that, you know, you can still make a relatively quick drive, get up to Tilikum Beach and Wakanda Beach in these areas, and still access the beach pretty quickly. Now, moving south of Yachats, you're going to get through this really cool stretch. This is a really beautiful drive from Yachats to Florence, because this is very remote through here. There's really no towns. There's not going to be any homes or residential development aside from just a few different one-off places. And just south of Yachats, you get up over Cape Perpetua. This is pretty windy through here. So, you know, you're going to be maybe gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. But there are some great natural areas, hiking trails and things like that through here. So if you were living in Yachats, getting down to Cape Perpetua, very accessible. And then continuing to move south, you do have this stretch where you have some beaches, some access points, but you don't have long stretches of uninterrupted beaches through here. And then you're going to get down into the Hasita Head. We're going to get up and over some big elevation here as well. And then there's a lighthouse here, which is really cool. Definitely worth checking out. People say it's haunted. You can stay there. So definitely something worth checking out if you're in the area. And then you come down the hill and you're going to pop right down into this Florence area. So like I talked about in the beginning of the video, Florence is going to be a little more secluded. I mean, you do have Reedsport to the south, 20 or 30 minutes. This drive from Yachats down to Florence, not a super long stretch in terms of mileage, but again, windier roads, up and over hills. In Florence, you do feel a little more isolated, but it's a town of over 10,000 people. It's one of the bigger towns on the Oregon coast. And you're just an hour from Eugene, which has like a couple 100,000 people, shopping malls, great restaurants. It's a college town. Pretty much anything you would need living in Florence is going to be accessible from Eugene. Pretty easy. And a lot of people, like for home services, for example, living in Florence will end up hiring people from Eugene. They can make the trip out. You know, that's a pretty standard arrangement. But Florence is super unique. A lot of people really like Florence, in particular people who are moving to the Oregon coast for retirement. It has an older age demographic, so the median age is over 60 in Florence. There's a lot of residential areas that feel kind of really quiet, not 55 plus communities, but feel like they have that dynamic a little bit. So again, in Florence, it's going to be super unique. So on the north side here, you have Clear Lake, and then you have Munsell Lake, and then you have Mercer Lake right here, and then you have Sutton Lake. So you have all these lakes here just on the east side of town, and there are some residential development through here, in particular on Lake Mercer here. So that's cool if you want to be by a lake. There's other areas too around Florence that have that dynamic as well. But on the north side of town, you have Hasita Beach. So this is unincorporated, kind of like Bayshore and Waldport. This is unincorporated Lane County, but a Florence address. So they actually have their own water district in here, but you can see there's a ton of residential development up in this area. A lot of people really like living up here, and in particular because it's really the only spot in town in Florence where you can have this type of beach access. You can get some of that down here on the south side. So if you were south of the Siuslaw River and south of town, you can get over to the beaches, but you're kind of fighting through dunes and things like that. You know, the access isn't as great, whereas in Heceta Beach, you're right there on the beach. And you have long, uninterrupted stretches of beach through here. So this is a really popular area. If people like Florence, but they want to be really near the water, in particular the ocean, and have access to beaches, Heceta Beach is an area that a lot of people gravitate toward. So most of Florence is going to be through this 101 corridor here, where along here you have grocery stores and some gas stations and fast food and things like that. There is some development here on the river. So this stretch through here along rhododendron is really cool. It has a pretty similar dynamic to Heceta Beach. So really this entire stretch of rhododendron from town in Florence all the way up into Heceta Beach, this is kind of the sweet spot right here. This is where a lot of people flock to. There is some older residential development here really close to town. Over on the east side of the highway, you do have some neighborhoods in here too, which are nice communities, but don't really give you the feel that you're at the beach, at the ocean. You don't have ocean views. You're not as close to the water, but still definitely some good options in here as well. Definitely one of the highlights of Florence is going to be this Old Town area. So this little downtown, Old Town Florence, in my opinion, really rivals any of the downtown areas of any Oregon coast town in terms of the volume of really great restaurants, bars, coffee shops. You're right on the Siuslaw River here, so you're not on the beach, you're not on the ocean, but it feels like a little beach town, definitely. And there's this marina here. You can get out on the water. I mean, if you like fishing, if you like paddle boarding, kayaking, things like that, Florence is definitely going to offer a lot of opportunity for that. And overall, Florence is definitely an area that draws a lot of people who like outdoor activities overall. So again, you have the fishing, you have the lakes, where you can get out on the water, boating, paddle boarding, things like that. But you have the sand dunes. So you have this Oregon dune country here that kind of starts around Florence, goes down all the way to Lakeside, just north of Coos Bay, North Bend. So a lot of this stretch through here, a lot of sand dunes. People take out ATVs and dune buggies and things like that. You have this Honeyman State Park, really cool place to go set up shop for a weekend, access the sand dunes. Another thing about Florence is you have this other community to the south, which is Dune City. And in Dune City, you have Wohink Lake and Siltcoos Lake. So this probably has a little more development than on Mercer and Sutton to the north. And this is a community that's going to be a little more removed from town. So you get south of town about 10 minutes. And a lot of this through here is lakefront. A lot of it isn't lakefront necessarily, but a lot of these homes in here do have access points to marinas or to easements where they can put in a boat, put in a kayak, things like that. This is another really popular area that a lot of people tend to be flocking to when it comes to the Florence area and the Central Oregon coast overall. So when we're looking at the Central Oregon coast, you have this corridor from Lincoln City to Florence, and there are a ton of different unique areas, a lot of variety through here. Lincoln City down to Yachats, you have towns that are closer together, but still do feel a bit removed from each other with their own unique dynamics and unique offerings. In total, there's about 60,000 people in this stretch, so kind of sneakily one of the more populated areas of the Oregon coast. But either way, you're going to get a ton of variety on the Central Oregon coast. You have your bigger towns, so you have your Lincoln City, Newport, and Florence. You have your kind of mid-sized towns to small towns, being Depoe Bay, Waldport, Yachats, and then you have these unincorporated communities like Glen Eden Beach, Lincoln Beach, Otter Rock, South Beach, Tillicum, you have Wakanda Beach. So you have these little areas that are not necessarily in any town, but they are close enough to a bigger town to where you're not going to be totally remote and isolated, but do offer more of a laid-back, kind of quiet, day-to-day experience for living. All right, if this video was helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. If you want to get more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. As always, we really appreciate you watching, and until next time, we'll talk to you later.